Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We're very happy you're with us this morning. I'm Janice Kaminer-Resnick, and I am delighted to welcome you on behalf of the leadership team at America at a Crossroads, which in addition to me includes former Congressman Mel Levine and former Los Angeles County Supervisor Zev Yaroslavsky. A special welcome back to Prime Minister Olmert and Foreign Minister Al-Kidwa. What incredible timing to have you with us today of all days. For those of you who are not part of our regular weekly audience, America at a Crossroads is in its 6th year of producing virtual weekly programming featuring leading voices on the urgent issues facing our democracy. In addition to U.S. politics and policy, the series presents timely programs on Israel and the Middle East, offering context and insight into critical regional challenges. Today, we are particularly proud to be partnering with the UCLA Nazarian Center for Israel Studies and the UC Berkeley Diller Institute for Israel Studies, as well as the UCLA Center for Middle East Development, all three of whom have developed today's program. It has been an honor to work with Professors Steve Zipperstein and Kenneth Bamberger, two esteemed scholars. Professor Bamberger is the Rosalind and Arthur Gilbert Foundation Professor of Law, Faculty Director, Berkeley Center for Law and Technology, and the Faculty Director of the Diller Institute for Jewish Law and Israel Studies, all operating out of UC Berkeley. Please welcome Professor Bamberger to continue our program today.
Thank you so much, Janice. And welcome to all of you to this especially timely program. I'm Ken Bamberger. I teach at the law school here at Berkeley, and I'm faculty director of Berkeley's Helen Diller Institute for Jewish Law and Israel Studies, co-organizer of the program with the UCLA Eunice and Soraya Nazarian Center for Israel Studies. And I'm really honored to introduce today's participants. In a minute, I'll turn things over to Professor Steve Zipperstein, who teaches in UCLA's Luskin School of Public Affairs. He's an expert in the Middle East. He's taught at Tel Aviv University, and he's the author of, among other things, 3 foundational books on the legal history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, all alongside an illustrious career in the law, during which he was a prominent litigator, federal prosecutor, and the chief legal officer of BlackBerry and Verizon Wireless. Steve has just taken the helm as director of the Nazarian Center for Israel Studies at UCLA. And I want to take this opportunity to say that attracting Steve to this position is an extraordinary and visionary achievement for UCLA and for the entire University of California. He's long been a partner with the Diller Institute at Berkeley, and we are so privileged to be able to enhance that partnership in this role. Welcome, Steve. And we're honored to be joined by 2 legendary statesmen at a time when statesmanship and leadership is desperately in need, Ehud Olmert and Nasser Al-Kidwa. Ehud Olmert served as Prime Minister of the State of Israel from 2006 to 2009, making the establishment of a peace agreement with the Palestinians his priority. He served in the Knesset from 1973 to 2009 and was twice elected to be mayor of Jerusalem. In 2008, Prime Minister Olmert proposed a peace agreement with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas on the basis of a 2-state solution. Nasser Al-Kidwa is a prominent member of the Palestinian political party Fatah, a member of the Palestinian National Council, and the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Palestinian National Authority. In 2021, Foreign Minister Al-Kidwa founded the National Democratic Assembly and headed the Freedom List for the Palestinian elections that were arbitrarily canceled. Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Foreign Minister, a very warm welcome to the both of you.
Thank you.
Ken, thank you so much for your kind words. Janice, thank you so much for your partnership, your collaboration. Honored to be working with all of you. And of course, extraordinarily honored to have our 2 incredible guests with us today. Here's how we're going to proceed. I will ask each of our speakers to begin with about 6 minutes of opening comments, and then I will pose questions to them for the remainder of our time together. We do have a hard stop at the top of the hour, and so let's be mindful of that. We advertised this event as an event marking the 30th anniversary of the Second Oslo Agreement, the interim agreement, which was signed September 28, 1995. But of course, yesterday we had an extraordinarily dramatic development at the White House with the announcement of the Trump plan to bring the Gaza war to an end, to set the parties on course toward peace in the region, economic development, reconstruction of Gaza, and eventual Palestinian statehood. And in light of those developments, our speakers will react to what happened yesterday, as well as talking about the historical context. By agreement of our speakers, I'm going to ask Prime Minister Olmert to begin. The floor is yours, Prime Minister, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Steve. Good morning. I'm delighted to be your guest again, and I'm delighted to have this opportunity together with my friend, Dr. Nasser Al-Kidwa. I know it's quite rare on these days that a prominent Palestinian and an Israeli appear together, but this is the nature of our partnership, which wants also to remind everyone that there is a chance for partnership between Israelis and Palestinians, and we have to work hard in order to promote it and to strengthen it, and that's what we are trying to do. I think that the event last night was interesting, somewhat different from the kind of presentations made by President and the Prime Minister, the whole setup. But the bottom line is that there is what seems to be a possible understanding, quite yet vague, if I can say, not explicit and not final, of an understanding about the ending of the war in Gaza, and some expectations which I think are at least within the context of what was said yesterday, is somewhat out of realistic framework for peace and dramatic change in the entire Middle East and so on and so forth. What we really have here is a possible chance to end the war in Gaza, which is what I have been talking about. And I think, and Dr. Al-Kidwa here will be able to comment on that, we have signed a statement on the 17th of July 2024, which is more than a year ago. And all of the elements of the Trump plan of yesterday are already indicated in what we have published and signed and presented to the international community more than a year ago, which of course raises the questions, why did we have to wait so long in order to reach an understanding which is not yet even final, if we could have done it a long time ago. Presently, it all depends on the Hamas, and I hope that the Hamas will agree. I'm not certain that it will happen, unfortunately. I think that there are serious questions here. But if indeed it will happen, then if the war ends and the hostages are returned and Palestinian prisoners are released according to that plan, the 200 and the 1,700, so on, according to different categories, and an interim security force is organized to take over Gaza and allow Israel to pull out gradually, but ultimately completely from Gaza, this is a huge step forward, which we all have to be happy about, and only regret that it came so late when it could have been done much earlier, as I said. And I think that both of us should be proud of the fact that we talked precisely about this, the interim security force, the end of the war, the return of the hostages, the release of the prisoners, the appointment of a governing body, which is made of commissioners, which are not part of the workforce of the Palestinian Authority today, are, however, recognized by the Palestinian Authority, which is at a very broad framework, is part of this process. So I am hopeful. I'm not confident. I think that this is still remains to be seen whether the two extreme elements, and I don't compare between the two, the Hamas on the one side and the partners of the Netanyahu's government on the other side. As again, I said, I don't draw comparisons between them. This is a terrorist organization. They are a group of thugs and messianic thugs which are threatening the foundations of the values of the state of Israel. They are, seems to be against the agreement. Now the question will be who will be against first and how it will impact the possible implementation of this process. Let's wait and see.
Okay, thank you so much for your opening comments. Dr. Al-Kidwa, I will turn it over to you for 6 minutes.
Good morning, Berkeley. Good morning to all of you, and thank you all for the invitation and for being here. I think that is very important. Of course, as Ehud Olmert said, had it been for us, probably we would have reached a peace agreement long time ago. And at least what we have done shows that it is possible. And not only it is possible, but we don't have other choice. We have to go for something like that. Now, let me begin with a few words about Oslo, because this is the title of our meeting. Oslo has been very important political development, and it could have developed in the right direction. Unfortunately, in retrospect, one could say that the agreement itself, the DOP, is badly written, unfortunately. I went lately and took a look, and frankly, it's really bad. Structurally, I could point out to two main problems. One is the absence of anything with regard to the cessation of settlement activities, which is the antithesis of making peace. And the reason for that, I think that we are the people who live outside the Palestinian territory did not understand the complexity and the importance of the matter. And the second structural problem is the absence of the definition of the end result. We didn't know where we are going. The Palestinian side thought that it is a given that we are going to a Palestinian independence, but of course, nothing like that was written in the agreement. So structurally, there are two very important problems that caused, I think, the failure of the agreement. But in addition to that, of course, came the performance of both sides, the right-wing successive Israeli government that made sure that the agreement is killed, or the agreements with S are killed, and the sloppy and miserable kind of performance on the Palestinian side that also caused lots of problems, in addition to actions taken by organizations such as Hamas, including the suicide bombers, things of that sort that caused all kind of problems. So in a way, it's not surprising that the agreement did not succeed, but at least it's something that could have been successful. It's something that we should study and learn lessons from it. And that takes me to what happened yesterday. Yesterday, frankly, similar to what Ehud Olmert said, I'm not sure about what happened yesterday. I think I'm a bit ambivalent about this. There are many gaps. There are many things that need still to be negotiated. There are things that would allow those who are against making peace to torpedo the whole thing on the way, and that's a very dangerous thing. But there are some positive things. The most important positive thing, I would say, is the engagement, the serious engagement of the President of the United States of America. So finally, the gentleman decided that it's time for him to engage and put his weight behind the process. And that in itself, of course, is something positive and something that could help leading the way forward. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think that both sides, irrespective of comparison or no comparison, both sides will try to torpedo the whole thing. It depends who will come first. Yes, absolutely. But I don't think that this is going to be smooth sailing. It's going to be very complicated things, probably because it's difficult situation on the ground, and it's difficult, of course, conflict, historic conflict, not only in Gaza, but in Gaza and the West Bank, all the Middle East in general. Anyway, let me stop here and let's take some questions and see how things will develop. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much to both of you. We're off to a great start. Lots of questions are pouring in from our audience, and let me encourage the audience to please send us your questions. I'll try to get to as many as I can before the end of the hour. Let me begin, though, by talking a little bit more about the initial reactions to the White House announcement yesterday. There was a joint statement from 8 Arab and Muslim countries, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, Pakistan, Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt, all indicating strong support for the Trump announcement yesterday. This morning, the Secretary General, Guterres, issued a statement calling upon all parties to work toward implementation of the plan. President Macron making a similar comment. Hamas, for its part, said they would study the proposal responsibly. I think that was their word. And then this morning, President Trump was asked, how long will you wait to hear back from
3 or 4
Hamas? And
days.
he said maybe 3 or 4 days. So let me ask both of you, starting with Dr. Al-Kidwa, how do you see this dynamic playing out? I mean, clearly Hamas, some anticipating that Hamas will want to negotiate here, although on television yesterday, Adam Bowler, the president's emissary for hostage negotiations, said, no, there's no negotiation. It's take it or leave it. So, Dr. Al-Kidwa, and then I'll ask Prime Minister Olmert, how do you see this playing out over the next few days?
Well, I'm not sure, but let me say this. Prime Minister Netanyahu, for instance, had already said that he is opposed to a Palestinian state, although the state or the potential state is in the agreement. So, there has been already some, serious, whatever you want to call it, serious overcoming of the agreement. But to answer your question, what's going to happen? As I said earlier, I'm not sure, but I think the position of the 8 countries is important. It will add to the burden. I think that Hamas is faced with very difficult decision to make. It's not going to be easy. But if I am to bet, I don't think that they will agree to hand over all hostages without first having some kind of guaranteed withdrawal, Israeli withdrawal from Gaza Strip. So I think more or less we will be on the same place, where we will be in square one again. And frankly, as I said earlier, I didn't see enough detail that would cause some comfort for everybody that this is going to go smoothly and to have some reasonable sailing, hopefully toward the desired results.
And Prime Minister, how do you see things playing out?
I have to say, Steve, I have to say that I didn't have a chance to talk with Dr. Al-Kidwa before we started this since yesterday. And yet I find myself in a quite significant agreement with his judgment and his impressions. First of all, let's not forget, what we saw yesterday were 2 somewhat different presentations. There was the presentation of President Trump's plan, and there was then the presentation of what Netanyahu understood of his plan, which was not congruent with what Trump said. There were some very significant differences. One which was mentioned by Dr. Al-Kidwa, which is the heart of our initiative about a 2-state solution, Palestinian state. This is something that Netanyahu, in the most decisive and explicit manner, deny the options of and the future of and whatever. And yet it is mentioned in the Trump presentation as an option. So Trump wasn't very generous about this, but he left it as an option. And we should remember that in the deal of the century, 2020, that Trump presented in the first term of his presidency, he explicitly talked about the two states and the Palestinian state. So this is just one thing. Another thing is the withdrawal of Israel. There were phases of the Israeli withdrawal in the plan with the printed plan that was presented by the president. There were no conditions to the Israeli withdrawal. It has to be carried out. Netanyahu presented it as if there are some preliminary conditions that will give Israeli authorities discretion whether to pull out or not from gradually into the buffer zone, which was presented. These are extremely sensitive and significant aspects, of course. And therefore, I think that even though someone may have said that there will not be negotiations, there will be negotiations. And the negotiations started already. And they will take care, will continue. And in the process now, there will be voices coming from one side, as I said before, and from the other side, against or in favor. And we are not, unfortunately, we are not as close to the actual implementation that will allow the release of the hostages as a first significant step in very shortly, as we all expected. It will take time.
Mm-hmm. Let me move on. There are a lot of questions coming in from the audience, which I really appreciate. And a couple of the questions relate to the respective roles going forward of President Trump and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Dr. Al-Kidwa, you commended the president for now becoming personally involved, putting the prestige of his office on the line here to see this agreement through, serving as chair of the Peace Board, as he called it yesterday. But clearly, former Prime Minister Tony Blair looks like he's in line to play a significant role here. Can you talk about both President Trump and Prime Minister Blair? Do the Palestinians have confidence in both of them? Prime Minister Olmert, do the Israelis have confidence in both of them? How do you see their roles in this process going forward?
Listen, in all honesty, I think part of the problem is the role that is given to the board, the international board, because it seemed as if the board will be the governing body of Gaza, and that is something that will be hard to swallow on the side of the Palestinian people generally.
Mm-hmm.
But let me say this: there is big difference between President Trump as president structurally, legally, president of the United States of America on one hand, and Mr. Tony Blair. Mr. Tony Blair has no brilliant reputation, I have to say, in the region generally because of his role in Iraq and what came after and more recent things. I don't want to dwell much in the stories, but it's not something that is going to be welcome for sure. And that is one of the problems. There is no doubt about that. And irrespective of any statements made by any country, to me, given the fact that I know a little bit about the inner workings of some of those countries, it's very hard to imagine that they really, really are ready to swallow the presence and the authority of Mr. Blair.
Okay, Prime Minister?
Yeah, well, I'm not certain that Nasser does justice to Tony Blair. I know of the certain grievances regarding his time as Prime Minister about Iraq. I know Tony very well. I'm friendly with him, I have to say, for the sake of transparency. And I know his involvement while he was prime minister and subsequently when he was the emissary of the quartet in the Middle East. He is more familiar, trust me, Nasser, and trust me, Stephen, he's more familiar with the Middle East 10 times more, 100 times more than his co-chair of the board of of the advisors.
Okay.
What he knows about the Middle East is, hugely more than what Trump knows. That's number one. With all due respect to the president, and I absolutely commend his involvement and his decision to become chairman, which is, I think, unprecedented in modern American history, if ever, that American president became chairman of the board of some international body that was dealing with a certain part of the world. Quite unusual. I think that the board is not going to be the government. Look, let's put it straight. The governor has to be the Palestinian. Has to be a Palestinian that is accepted by, of course, by the board, is accepted by America, is accepted by the other countries, of course, by Israel as well. By the way, I have a candidate who could be the governor of Gaza. He's right now sitting on the other side of the screen with me. He's perhaps the most qualified and experienced and respectable. Dr. Al-Kidwa could be. He's my candidate, but I don't intervene. Maybe they will come to this conclusion. But it is important that in the process of implementation, there will be many disagreements and many different sensitive issues, which will have to be sorted out. And it's good to have a board of this nature that will become like the appeal body for some of the possible differences and disputes that will arise in the process of implementation. So I don't see this as an alternative to a government which has to be governed by a Palestinian that is acceptable to the Palestinian Authority, as we proposed more than a year ago, but with independent executive powers. He will have to have independent executive powers. He will not be an assistant of the Palestinian Authority president that will give him orders. No, his appointment will be accepted and endorsed by the Palestinian Authority, but he will exercise the executive powers of himself that will be subject to the possible comments made by the board that President Trump proposed yesterday. And yes, in spite of some of the sensitivities about Tony Blair, the fact I think that his appointment was accepted in advance by all the participating countries, by the Qataris, by the Egyptians, by the Jordanians, by the Emiratis, by the Saudis, most likely, otherwise he wouldn't have proposed it. And I think that he could play, I hope, and I believe that he could play a positive role.
Okay, thank you both. We have about 30 minutes left. Lots of questions, hundreds of questions pouring in from our audience. Keep them coming. I'm going through them as quickly as I can, trying to consolidate them. A lot of questions have come in. If we kind of look down the road to the eventual time when a Palestinian state comes into being, and of course the Oslo Accords say very clearly, Israel agreed in writing that Gaza and the West Bank are indivisible. So we're talking about a single state comprised of the West Bank, Gaza, final borders, of course, left to the permanent status negotiations. But once that state comes into being, and I'll ask Dr. Al-Kidwa to address this first, a lot of questions, and let me just throw them out there and please respond to whichever ones you want to. Do you contemplate a role for Hamas? Any kind of a role in a future Palestinian government?
Easy.
No, okay. Okay, that was an easy and fast one. some of the harder questions are as follows. What about the Jews who are living in settlements? Would the future government of Palestine be willing, if those settlers want to stay and live under Palestinian rule, would the future government of Palestine be willing to grant them citizenship? Just as there are hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs living in Israel who have citizenship, who are judges, one on the Israeli Supreme Court, pharmacists, etc.
No comparison, Steve. I'm sorry to intervene. No
Yeah,
comparison. I'm sorry.
understood.
They are Israeli Arabs that are Israeli citizens. If they consider themselves to be Palestinians, that's all right. I have no problem with this. But they are part of the state of Israel from the proclamation of the state of Israel in 1948. The Palestinians living in the territories are occupied, and the Israelis that live in the territories live in the occupied territories.
Correct.
So their status is entirely different. Now, I think that Dr. Al-Kidwa will say momentarily that in our discussions, and this is understood and agreed by us, and this was part of what I proposed at a time in 2008, the Israelis that live in the territories which will not be annexed by agreement to the state of Israel, because according to my plan and to our plan, about 4.4% of the territories will be annexed when and if and when, of course, the Palestinian state will be recognized formally in that agreement, and 4.4% will be annexed, and an equal-sized territories that was part of the state of Israel prior to 67 will be swapped to the Palestinian state, or the Palestinian state will be identical to the 67 borders. Now, 82% of the Israelis that live across the Green Line in the territories live in these 4.4%. So the question about what will happen with the Israelis outside of the territories, which will then become part of the state of Israel, refers to 18% of the territories. There can be few options. They could continue to live in where they live, but they will be residents of a Palestinian state, and they will be subject to the government of the Palestinian state, even if they keep the Israeli citizenship, which is all right. They can be relocated into the 4.4% territories, which are in the West Bank, but will become part of the state of Israel. And we can relocate all of them without any difficulties into the 4.4%, or they can be relocated into Israel, and there is enough space for all of them. So in other words, the practical implementation of the two-state solution in the Palestinian state is still feasible, possible, practical, and can be done if we will decide. Of course, two sides will decide to do it, if the Israelis and the Palestinians will agree to it. We haven't crossed the irreversible line. Of course, Bamberger and Smotrich are doing everything possible in order to change it. Right. And in as long as we will wait, we will jeopardize the chances of implementation. But as it is today, it can be done, and therefore there is an urgency to move forward, implementing the end of the war in Gaza and moving rapidly into the negotiations about the two-state, so that it can be implemented and change the course of history.
Yep, understood. And it was really the 18% that I was referring to. If they would choose to remain, would the government of Palestine confer Palestinian citizenship on those 18%? Other questions that have come from the audience. By the way, thank you so much, Prime Minister, for giving us the background on the compensatory land swaps and so forth. Other questions for Dr. Al-Kidwa. On day one of Palestinian statehood, after the flag raising ceremony and the national anthem is played and the congratulations are conferred by the world community, would the new state of Palestine have a peace treaty with the neighboring state of Israel, or some kind of deconfliction agreement, a trade agreement? What would the border look like? What would the currency be for the Palestinian government, for the Palestinian state? So can you give us some idea of your vision, Dr. Al-Kidwa, for and I'll use Prime Minister Olmert's term of implementation,
My
what would the state look like?
my personal vision probably is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that the fact that these things should be negotiated between the two sides and
Sure.
should be agreed upon. And I am open for all kind of relationship between the two states, up to the confederation, by the way, because some people would tell you that we have managed a new solution. What's the new solution? Confederation. Same thing. Same thing. I mean, two states leading to the confederation. We need to negotiate the economic relationship. We need to negotiate the movement of the population. We need to negotiate the kind of borders, as you said, and what resembles, you know, the real borders and what not, for instance, and things like that. But these are things, including, by the way, what is going to happen with the 18% of settlers. These are things that need to be negotiated between the two sides. And of course, I do have personal opinion, but I don't think that it's the smart thing to do to discuss these personal opinions publicly before any negotiations between the two sides.
Understood. Thank you so much.
You see that
Yes,
Dr.
please.
Dr. Al-Kidwa already behaves like the incoming governor of Gaza, and he's very careful. Okay, I accept it.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, Prime Minister, but I knew that you were going to interject that as well. I want to go back. I've got a very interesting question from a professor from the University of California, a very senior emeritus professor who says he's been following both of your careers for decades, and he is a great admirer of both of you. And he would just like to hear a little bit from both of you about your journey, because 30, 40 years ago, probably the two of you would not have been working together in the way you have been since July of 2024. How did you both come to the point 14 months ago when you decided to come together, when you accepted our invitation to come to the UCLA Center for Middle East Development Conference in Prague? I was just so thrilled to see both of you on the stage talking together. But how did you come over the decades? And by the way, Prime Minister, we all wish you a very, very warm and happy birthday today. Very special birthday.
Yes. He's getting younger, by the way, younger.
Yes, significantly. But how did how did you both come together to get to the point where you began working together so closely a year and 2 months ago? What was your journey?
We should start.
Prime Minister. Prime Minister.
It's a birthday present, right? Well, I was not where I am today. This is obvious. It's given political fact that is known to everyone. I was not in the far right, but I was in the right. And when I was elected mayor of Jerusalem, it was the first time in my life that I moved from just talking about the issues into actually handling them and dealing with them, which is an entirely different thing. It's one thing when you sit in the honorary stand or in the Knesset bench and you spell it out. You should do this, you should do that. And then you take over as mayor of Jerusalem. I was elected to in the year 1993, shortly after the Oslo Agreement was signed. And I had to deal with the day-to-day lives of the Palestinians. And what I saw there has been entirely different from what I expected and what I thought it should be, and how I thought I can live with it as a human being, as a man that cares for human dignity and for human rights. What I saw is that in the most united city in the world is actually the most divided city in the world. That there are two people living in one city, in which in one part they live in the 21st century, and in the other part they live in the 19th century. And that nothing that Israel was doing for so many years since the changing of the status of Jerusalem in 1967 was even making it close to unite the two parts of the city and to provide the people living in both sides of the city equal opportunities, equal rights. I hate to say, but until I was mayor of Jerusalem, there was not one school built in the east side of Jerusalem. For all kinds of reasons. I don't want to go now into a thorough discussion. It will take a lot of time. Not one, which is totally inconceivable. I'm not talking about other things, the roads, the infrastructure, everything. And the more I dealt with it, the more I understood that Israel has no option of keeping the territories and yet making sure that the people living in the territories will entertain what they deserve, which is to have their own rights recognized and exercised. And that has moved me away from where I was into where I understood that at the end of the day, the only possible solution in the first stage is for us to make sure that the Palestinians exercise their rights for self-determination and for independent, sovereign lives of their own. I believed then, and I still believe now. I don't know about confederation. I don't know to define exactly what will be the legal structure at the end of the day. But I think that if there will be a Palestinian state alongside the state of Israel, it will take few years until the bitterness of both sides, of the encounters, the confrontations, the terror, the killing, the bloodshed, everything will evaporate. But at the end of the day, the most significant friend of the state of Israel amongst all of the Arabs and Muslim countries will be our neighbors next door. They know us, we know them. We have lived together in all kinds of ways, sometimes very, very violent and very brutal and very demanding. But at the same time, we know them and they know us. And I'm absolutely certain, I am a believer, I'm an optimist, that the day will come that we will create a very good cooperation. There is no question in my mind about it. But I'm afraid that it will take time, even much longer after I celebrate many more birthdays in my own private life.
And Dr. Al-Kidwa, how did you come to be together with the Prime
Well,
Minister?
actually, I have to tell you that we didn't know each other. I mean, the first time we met, it was a webinar with the participation of Thomas Friedman, and that, we started to discover that we think in a close way. And I don't want to say similar way or same way, but at least in a close way. And we also knew, both of us knew, that neither of us is a dreamer. Neither of us is just left-winger or, peacenik or whatever. I mean, Ehud Olmert is a warrior, and I am a warrior also. I'm a political warrior, and he is warrior. So that adds to the credibility, I think, not distract from it, because both have something to give, and both is keen to achieve the interest of the respective peoples and the respective countries. So that's very useful and very, very good. And as I said, it adds to the equation and provides some additional help in our work.
Okay. Let me ask you both about domestic politics. Prime Minister, election scheduled for a year from now in Israel. Dr. Al-Kidwa, discussion about reform. You, of course, have been very vocal about the lack of elections in the Palestinian Authority. How do you see yesterday's announcement in Washington, D.C., impacting domestic politics, Prime Minister in Israel and Dr. Al-Kidwa in Palestine? I'll start with Prime Minister.
Well, first of all, as I said before, I saw yesterday the show wasn't just a regular, traditional pattern of political presentation of an international agreement, of the significance and the importance which it is. This was some kind of a show, which is, I think, is representative of the style of President Trump. I think having the credit for. He does it in an entirely different way. You can like him, you can don't like him, doesn't matter. But this is how he does it. I think that it was, but it created a certain hope that for all of us, because he talked with such confidence about the ability to bring together all the different sides, including, of course, the compliments he gave to the presidents of the Emir of Qatar and the Prime Minister of Qatar. I mean, it was astounding how great leaders and exceptional human beings they are, and so on and so forth. And the Prime Minister of Turkey and everyone else. This is the bottom line of all of this was that there is a certain spirit of cooperation that Israel was brought into, and that the Palestinian Authority is on the sidelines of it, is taken into consideration, although not, in my mind, not explicit enough, which is a mistake. And that Hamas is not going to be anymore in the center of events. They will have to be removed, and the sooner the better. So the patterns, the different components, the principles, all of these are accepted, except I don't know if it is a fantasy or is it something more tightly knit already to be implemented soon. We'll have to remain and wonder and expect.
Okay. And Dr. Al-Kidwa, impact on Palestinian politics.
About the reform of the Palestinian Authority. Let me say this. I am someone who is convinced that we can't have high hopes of real progress without having a change of the leadership on both sides. In other words, I think the Israeli people will have to change the Israeli government and have a new government, and the Palestinian people needs to change the Palestinian leadership and have a new leadership. This is the bottom line, because we can speak about elections, we can speak about fighting corruptions, we can speak about many things as part of the reform, but I don't think that this will do the trick. What will do the trick is a change of guards. We need to have new personalities that lead the Palestinian people, and that's the bottom line, I'm
afraid. Okay. And let me...
I want to add
just
one more word.
Please, Prime Minister.
With Nasser's permission. Because I think he heard it already a couple of times. For me, our so many campaigns and visits and meetings that we held over the last year and a half across Europe and in our countries. I personally think that the ultimate test for great leadership is the ability to do at the right time, when it is needed, when the time comes, to do the opposite of everything that you have been preaching for and fighting for and campaigning for and committing yourself for all your life. This is what Menachem Begin did in 1978 when he went to Camp David with Anwar Sadat, and after promising that he will annex all of the territories, he did exactly the opposite as far as Sinai is concerned and pulled out completely. This was the greatest manifestation of the highest form of leadership. Now, the question is, therefore, from my side, Israeli side, I'm not talking about the Palestinians now, I'm talking about Israel. Is there someone here that has the power, that has the determination, that has the commitment, that has the vision to look into history, not to look at the past and become a captive of the fears and the weaknesses of what we have been through as Jews across our history, but that has the power to look forward into the future and say, I'm going to do exactly the opposite of everything that I said before, because this is what needs to be done in order to once and for all solve this historic problem. Is Bibi capable of it? I can guarantee you, no way. He is not. Therefore, I subscribe to the final judgment of Dr. Al-Kidwa that we need a change of leadership. I'm fighting for it. I'm campaigning for it. I'm talking about it. I join all these rioters and demonstrators because I think that he is not the right person to lead the Jewish people into the future. And I'm not talking now anything about the past. As for the Palestinians, I can only say this. I presented a Palestinian leader, President Mahmoud Abbas, with a peace plan, for a comprehensive peace plan, with a Palestinian state on the basis of the 67 borders, with Jerusalem as part of Jerusalem, as the capital of the Palestinian state, of the old city of Jerusalem as being no part of either exclusive political sovereignty of either Israel or Palestine, but trust administered by a trust of 5 nations in order to guarantee that there will be free access to all the holy places, but there will not be exclusive political sovereignty. That was the realization of all the dreams that were spelled out by the Palestinian leadership. And the time came, he didn't have the courage to sign. So I hope that there will be a leader amongst the Palestinians that will have the courage to sign, but I pray that there will be a leader in Israel that will be able to do the opposite of everything that he has been preaching for and saying for in order to move forward towards it.
Yes, and you talked in Prague about that episode in 2008. You told us the story. And let me ask you, Prime Minister and Dr. Al-Kidwa, do you think that absent election, absent immediate change in government, today, 17 years later, in 2025, would President Abbas be willing now to say yes to that kind of plan?
Honestly, I don't think so. The gentleman is old enough and he is looking for good end of his life, comfortable end. He doesn't want lots of problems. He is not in the mood of starting something new. So, for reasons that might not be very good reasons, but, for him, they are important reasons. I don't think that he is ready for a new experience, let me put it this way. Probably not, but I hope that he will have the courage and will have the the willingness of accepting the fact that it's the end of the road, and thus he might help in creating a new positive situation. Let's hope so.
Okay. We have about 6 minutes left. We have not yet spoken about the issue of refugees. That was among the issues identified both in the 1993 Declaration of Principles and in the 1995 Interim Agreement for later negotiation, a so-called permanent status issue along with Jerusalem borders, security, and so forth. And Dr. Al-Kidwa, the question that I really would appreciate your guidance for me and for our audience is the following. A few years ago, I visited the Al-Amari refugee camp in Ramallah. And when I entered, and it's really just a neighborhood in Ramallah, not a separate standalone camp. When I entered, the question I immediately asked myself was, one day when Ramallah becomes one of the largest cities in the future state of Palestine, what will be the status of the people living in Al-Amari? Will they still continue to be deemed refugees, or will they be full-fledged citizens of the state of Palestine? So help us a little bit, Dr. Al-Kidwa, with your vision of the post-statehood status of the refugees, not just in Gaza and in the West Bank, but throughout the region.
Well, they should be full-fledged citizens of the state, nothing less, nothing more. But with regard to the refugees generally, let me tell you this. To my knowledge, there hasn't been serious discussion of this issue on the Palestinian side, and there hasn't been serious discussion of this issue between the Israeli and the Palestinian side. And that is wrong. That's wrong, but it's a fact. It's a fact of life. Discussion has to take place, and in-depth discussion should be. And I personally believe that refugees should feel respect of their case, of their cause. We should find them solutions, individual solutions, and it should be also understood that there is not going to be an influx of returnees to Israel, because that is going to change the nature of the state, and
Right.
we know that this is not going to happen. This is not going to be the case. But there are solutions. There are solutions that needs to be found and to be adopted, and that again should be part of negotiations between the two sides. But negotiations has to start in earnest, because the earlier that we start, the better for both sides and for the Middle East in general.
Definitely. So I'll ask you, Prime Minister
I,
Olmert, just to respond
yeah,
and say the
I
last
want
couple of
to,
words, and then we'll wrap up.
I want to refer to it. It's very important. I agreed, and I also hinted it at the Annapolis conference in the 2007 in Annapolis with President Bush and with President Abbas, that we are ready to negotiate the issue of the refugees within the framework of the Arab League Peace Initiative, which was originally confirmed on the 28th of March 2002, and then reconfirmed in the 28th of March 2007 in Riyadh. And that is something, again, of course, with the constraints that was referred to by Dr. Al-Kidwa. Of course, we do not agree to create and to accept a Palestinian state alongside the state of Israel if the idea is to bring all the Palestinians back into the state of Israel. I mean, the Palestinians will have their land in the Palestinian state and there where they will live. But there would have to be a certain symbolic gestures referring to this historic issue, very painful and very heartbreaking. I said in Annapolis that we are not indifferent to the suffering of people. Those who were uprooted, Palestinians that were uprooted from Israel, and also Jews that were uprooted from many different Muslim countries at the time of the conflict when it started in the 40s and so on and so forth. Finally, I want to say something which will irritate all of my Jewish friends, I believe, that are listening to us, but I feel that I have to say it. What is taking place today in the territories, in the West Bank, is intolerable, unacceptable, and unforgivable. What we call the Hilltop Youth and what they are doing to innocent Palestinians living there, it amounts to crimes of the highest order that are done without the proper intervention by the authorities of the state of Israel. I don't want to go into further details because we don't have the time, but this is something that I disagree with. I can't tolerate it. And I believe that from a moral point of view, if we will not protest against it, we will be implied as partners to something which is against the basic values of Jewish compassion and tolerance that characterize our country for generations. And therefore, at the end of these discussions, I felt that I need to say it so that no one that is now watching us and listening to us will think that I am indifferent to it. I'm not.
Yep. And I think, honestly, Prime Minister, the vast majority of at least American Jews would agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. And as a former U.S. federal prosecutor, I would volunteer to prosecute the criminals who were committing those outrages. We're at the end. I want to thank you both profoundly on behalf of America at a Crossroads, the Helen Diller Institute for Jewish Law and Israel Studies at UC Berkeley, and of course the Unison Soraya Nazarian Center for Israel Studies here at UCLA, along with our co-sponsors, the UCLA Center for Middle East Development and the UCLA Department of Public Policy. Many comments from the audience for both of you. Many people commenting that if anyone should be receiving the Nobel Peace Prize, it should be the two of you. I want to thank you for what you're doing.
Don't tell it to President Trump, who will lose his.
Yeah, exactly.
My lips are sealed. I want to thank you both profoundly for what you're doing, for your commitment
Thank you very
to
much.
peace. To our audience who observe Yom Kippur, Gmar Chatima Tova, to
Bar
everyone
Chatima
else,
Tova.
Shana Tova. May this be a year of peace, a year of the
Inshallah.
release of the Khatufim, and a march forward for the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people and the Israeli people to live side by side in peace, in peaceful
Thank you
coexistence.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
all
you.
very, very
Bar
much. Thank
Chatima
you to our audience. Toda rabba. Shukran.